To outline the structure, right-click on the middle line, Split Area, then Outliner, and now you can see the structures on the left side of your screen. To scale your structure, for example, from centimeters to millimeters, on Object Mode go on Object Transform Properties. Hit Link Scale and go from 1 to 0,1 in one direction. It automatically sets the others proportionally. Now we want to import the existing mesh. Go to File, Import of File. Choose the mesh you want and import it. You see now that both structures aren't aligned at all. So first, on the outliner, hide the data by hitting the eye next to it. Then assign the materials to the existing mesh. It is very similar with the previous tutorial. Make sure the faces are selected. Select first the outer surface, and then, when you create the material, it automatically sets the first one with the whole structure. So now we proceed with the left ventricle with the blue material. Only select what is not the septum. Then we continue with the right ventricle with the green material. In the end, we do the septum. Go on with the left ventricle side. Then hide it after assigning it. Make sure you select every part of the septum and assign it to the correct material. Now I just verify that all the materials are well assigned. Now we want to align the data with the mesh. To rotate the geometry, hit the circle here. Make sure to rotate the data and not the mesh. The left ventricle is the most critical part. You have to match the apex of the data with the left ventricle. You do that through the left ventricle apex. What is tricky here is that the rest of the geometry still has to match approximately. Another criteria is that the distance of the apex to the origin of the axis has to be of 2/3. You can translate both geometries to respect that. Also, the x-axis has to cut the top view in half. Now we will focus with fitting the mesh with the data. We will start with the septum. Isolate that part from the rest in both the mesh and the data. To fit a node of your mesh on the data, you first need to make sure that the retopo button is on. Now when you right-click on the node, it will snap it to the surface. So make sure you are facing correctly the surface. It is important that you keep the align structured. The element has to stay in a rectangular shape. By playing with the button's transparency, an X-ray, or the wire structure, you can verify your fitting. Now we proceed with the right ventricle. It is the same principle as before. With the septum part of the left ventricle, you can turn on the wire structure to align the surface with the previous one. Remember, your elements have to be in a cubic shape in the end. Here I see that the node has not been correctly fitted. I just come back to the first septum structure and fit it back to where it is supposed to be. Now for the left ventricle, the fitting is the same principle as before. With the myocardium, again, it is the same principle. Once you've fitted everything, you have to make sure the surfaces are aligned. For example, here the right ventricle with the myocardium. Again, with the wire structure or the transparency to make sure it is aligned. Here is the most tricky part. In the junction between the septum and the myocardium, you still have to make it the most rectangular possible and make sure you keep the right geometry at the same time. So you have to find out the best way to make a compromise between both.